Hello and welcome to the July 2018 edition of Mytech U, a monthly educational series for technology and business topics. My name is Nathan Austin. I will be your moderator today. And this month we will be discussing 25 Microsoft Office 365 tips and tricks. A little bit of a mouthful, but I'm not kidding. It'll be at least 25 different Microsoft Office 365 tips and tricks. We are fortunate to have Kim Finney, the service manager of Mytech's Colorado branch, who's actually been certified by Microsoft to deliver this content from a training perspective and coaching perspective. But before we turn the presentation over to Kim, a couple notes for the audience. First of all, thank you for joining us today. This presentation is being recorded and will be available 24 hours after the presentation. The audience is on mute. However, if you have a question, please use the question section of the GoToWebinar control panel. And we will do our best to either interject the question into the conversation or we will follow up with you afterwards. So with that said, Kim, please introduce yourself and lead us through the presentation.
Sounds good. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Kim. I'm the service manager, as Nate said, in the Colorado branch. And we have a lot of content to cover today, so we'll just hop right on in. First things first, we do have a couple of events coming up. Colorado, September 14th and November 6th, and Minnesota on September 7th and October 19th. If you're interested in getting more information on how Office 365 works, these are a great session to join. You can come in, spend about 4 hours with us to get to play around in a live environment. So good stuff there.
For those of you who will be watching this in the future, going to mytech.com/events, we held these events about every month. So if you happen to be watching past these dates, don't worry, we probably have another one scheduled in the future. So check out the events page and you'll be able to find the future event.
Very good. All right. So where to start in Office 365? There's a lot of different things that you can look at. So, where do you find the most important information? Logging into the Microsoft portal, you can find all of the applications available in Office 365. If you navigate in a web browser to office.com, you'll be able to explore all of your apps and look at what they call the waffle. And let me pull the screen up here. So here we are at office.com. Here's the waffle, fancy little thing. And you can pop it open and see all of your apps within the Office 365 tenant. Most folks aren't really aware that all of these things exist. Typically the average user of Office 365 uses your Office suite, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook, but doesn't explore into many of the other features, which is a shame because there's a lot of great stuff out there. Let's see. So there we are, pretty little picture. Biggest thing first, Microsoft OneDrive. OneDrive is an awesome tool for being able to have your files available to you either online only. If you're, say, working off of a tablet, you can have stuff available to you on your device all the time. Mark things as important. You can share files and folders directly from OneDrive and control edit permissions. And then you can also sync your OneDrive files with SharePoint. For a demonstration, wrong button there every time. So you can launch OneDrive either from your File Explorer down here, and you'll see OneDrive nested on the side of your window. You can also launch it from your little blue cloud down here. So it'll tell you the different kind of files available. Couple things to note: when you're trying to have a file available to you all the time, it'll be available online, offline, and it'll sync next time you connect to an internet connection. You can right-click on the file selected and choose Always Keep on this device, and you'll see the little check mark there go green. If you want to keep something in the cloud so that you have space freed up, you just right-click, free up space, and you'll see the little cloud icon. The little circle of arrows that you saw there means that the file is syncing with OneDrive. So Anytime you see that, there is kind of a continuous sync that always goes between OneDrive and the cloud. So all of your changes will get saved. Typically, anything within the last 15 minutes is automatically uploaded. So great stuff there. Also, let's see, sharing. You can click on share, and you'll get a handy pop-up window that you can share with people within your organization, outside of the organization. You can grant edit rights to specific people, and you can also give it as a read-only access. We wanted to say share this file with Nate. Oops. You can send it there, and you can send a copy of the link, send it in Outlook, or send it in different kinds of apps. So really handy tool if you just want to give somebody the option to hop in, edit a document you need them to review real quick. All of their changes will be saved live in the document, so no more multiple versions. It's really a great tool.
So Kim, a couple questions that have come up. One is, when you're sharing that, does that share access to everything in your OneDrive or just to that file?
To the specific file.
Awesome. That was one of the things that the question came up as a concern, is does it give them access to everything? The only other point that I'd like to show, if you could, let's see if it actually does it live. Can you open up the baseline completion document, or try and open it to see how the status changes? Perfect. Notice, now you don't even need to open it. So for everybody watching, notice how the green checkbox actually isn't full. That means that it is currently on the device, syncing it down to the device to open it. But what that also means, though, is that if you don't access that device, or that, that file for some period of time, OneDrive will automatically free up the space on your computer and move it back up to the cloud. So it'll temporarily keep it there, and basically OneDrive will manage the space and then move it back up if you don't. So the only way to make sure it stays on your inbox in your computer, and Kim mentioned this, is if you say always keep on this device, and then you'll see the full green checkbox. That was one little tip that I learned, but I didn't realize that it when it was the partial green checkbox, or the hollowed out checkbox, I didn't realize that OneDrive automatically managed that and will eventually free that up if you don't access it over a period of time. So that was one little thing that I found that I wanted to mention since we were hitting on that. So thanks for indulging me there, Kim.
Of course. Alrighty, and let's go back.
One last tip around OneDrive as you're pulling up the document is that it is that functionality we just displayed is only available if it's after a certain build of OneDrive and Windows 10. So you have to be on one of the current versions of Windows 10 and OneDrive in order for that functionality to exist. Otherwise, you might not see that status column that Kim had shown, where you see the different statuses of either the cloud or the green checkbox or the hollowed out green checkbox. So if you don't see it, if you have OneDrive and you don't see that, it's probably because of either your version of OneDrive or your version of Windows 10 that you're currently running.
Very good. Alrighty. Moving on to Outlook. There's all kinds of things that you can do in Outlook that a lot of people don't learn, and honestly, I kind of learn something new every CIE session when folks share what they're seeing with me. So you can organize conversations, you can use search folders and saved searches, sending out voting buttons, delay delivery of an email, and then drag and drop email to a calendar to create appointments. So we hop on into, all right. So here's Outlook, and we have one of our temporary tenants set up. So looking through emails, we all get kind of gross group emails, maybe about some donuts in the kitchen, or you have a planned event that everybody's responding back to. Maybe you don't want to see all of the messages and have them clutter up your mailbox. So what you can do, select the message, go up to click view, and you can hit shows conversations. You can arrange messages by all mailboxes, and this folder specifically depends on where things are getting sent, and if you have different rules set up, it'll pull that all together. So when you select Show as a Conversation, you'll see that everything gets condensed down into one grouping. So no more trying to dig around and find who said what when, which is kind of nice. And also, you don't have to see the clutter in your mailbox of additional messages when you can just kind of collapse them all into a single message. So really handy, helpful trick to keep things nice and clean within your Outlook folders. Another thing that you can do, I know I'm always losing different emails that have, say, attachments. I get a ton of reports sent to me, and so it's always kind of hard to keep track of what versions I'm receiving and when. So there's this handy built-in feature called search folders. These typically are the pre-made search folders. So if you have voicemail to email, they can automatically dump here. And then you have any emails with attachments. We can also create a new search folder. So let's say you're doing a lot of work with Dan Jump, who happens to be the CEO of Contoso. So you need to be able to find emails from him pretty quickly. You never delete anything from him. You'll go in and select mail from specific people. And, we gotta select Dan J. And this is pulling from the wrong list. This is pulling from the Mytech list.
So, yeah.
Let's change this drop down. Here we go. And contacts. There we go. So let's select Dan Jump and hit OK. And here you go. All of your emails ever received from Dan Jump that you still have in your inbox. Oh, come on, Outlook. My Outlook gets a little bit finicky. I have about 10 different mailboxes, so it typically takes a little bit of time to enact these changes. Fun fact, if you can cut down on the number of mailboxes that you have, your Outlook will work better.
Well, so Kim, just while that's loading, I guess, yes, there you go. One of the things, and one of the things that I think is a good clarification is that those search folders it's kind of like a predefined, it's a saved search that doesn't pull it out of your inbox, right? It just allows, it's kind of like it gives you a different way to view it, so you don't have to type in the search field and then, is that right? Or how does that work?
Yep, so what a search folder will do is go through all of the messages within all of your mailboxes and find that criteria that you selected, and it's more or less just highlighting them and putting them in a different location. If you get rid of your search folder, the email will still continue to exist in whatever folder it was living in before. It just kind of creates a really focused way to look at your emails. So you can keep the search folder open for as long as you need it. It can be open for today or for a year. It just gives you a different way to kind of sort things out where you're not having to scroll and say, what was the subject line of that email? Who sent that to me? What was that attachment? It just gives you kind of a way to zero in and find those things quicker. Alrighty, so voting buttons. We do a lot of different messages here where we say, let's do treats today. Do you guys want Sonic or do you want ice cream? Or we're going to do a picnic. Does August 11th work for you? Yes or no? A lot of times folks are creating maybe SurveyMonkey links or something like that, but there's actually a really handy thing that you can do within an email message directly. You can select voting buttons. You can say approve or reject. So if you're having people put in PTO requests, yes or no, yes, no, maybe, and then you can also set up some custom options. So when you do set up your custom options here, you'll type in your selections and they'll be they'll be divided by a semicolon. So when you do that, yep, that's the button that we want to use, and we can say treats, and then just select the voting button that you want. And when you send it out, Dan would get an email, and actually, let's send one to Karen just so that you can see what it looks like. And we'll see that come in here in just a moment. Click here to vote, and you can say yes or no, and then send your response similar to how you would do a meeting invite. Another super handy thing with messages is you can delay delivery. So let's say you're collecting some data and you have to have something to your supervisor by 5 p.m. and you have most of it done, all of the information's there, but maybe you just want to refine the message. So you can delay delivery to that person, or let's say you know that they're out on PTO until tomorrow morning and you want the message to be at the top of their mailbox, not buried in everything else that they've received over the last couple of days. So what you can do is say, do not deliver this before tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. because I want it to be the very first thing they see when they come in. You can go ahead and select that, close, and then when you send the message to, excuse me, when you send the message to Dan, it actually won't go through right away. It'll be held out in your outbox here until the time that you identified. So if you need to go back, maybe make an edit, or you get an answer before that message goes out and you don't need to send it anymore, you can go delete it. You're saving your coworkers or your clients from clutter, and you're kind of making sure that things get out at a timed fashion. So it's an awesome thing to use. Another thing that a lot of people aren't really aware of is that you can drag and
before you do that, just on the delayed delivery, one of the things that, I mean, just personally, and I know that you know, people, if you're working on a weekend or on the evening, which we're not saying we encourage, but I know that there are times when I do it, and I for people that I work with, I don't like to disrupt them on the weekend or late at night, or, you know, if I happen to have a late evening where I'm working on something. So I will intentionally use it because I don't want them to get the email on their, because, you know, almost everyone has email on their phone. And so if they get an email from, you know, a supervisor or somebody from the company that they might feel obligated to try and respond, and it might disrupt either late at night or on a weekend. So oftentimes I'll use that delayed delivery to the example you gave, Kim. I'll use that delayed delivery just so that they're not getting the email and thinking that I'm expecting some sort of reply, right? So I'll actually delay delivery, or even with vendors or clients. Like, I don't want to be sending a client a message at 2 o'clock in the morning if I happen to be working on something, so I'll just delay a delivery, you know, until the next business day, so that it like you said, it doesn't show up on the weekend or on the evening, but then it shows up first thing in their inbox the next business day morning. So that's some of the ways in which, like, for those of you who work into the evening on weekends, which I know happens, that's one of the powerful ways that I've used that, and I think it hopefully makes people feel like I'm not bothering them after hours, just because I'm working.
Yep, that's a great point. All right, so the next thing is sending or setting a email as a calendar item. A lot of people, you know, when you're setting up a meeting, you're trying to identify the agenda, or you show up and there is no real agenda and it's just kind of loosely defined, and you spend 15 minutes talking about what were we talking about and what's the point of this. Something really handy that you can do. So let's say you have to do a final meeting about this presentation. just grab the email and drop it down to your calendar, and you'll see the meeting pop up, and it has all of the data, including attachments and all of that. So you walk into the meeting, you know exactly what it's about, you have the context, you have any attachments that are applicable, and everybody's on the same page to move forward. You can also use this if, I know Nate uses this, to schedule himself to work on items. So maybe not anything that requires interaction with other people, but I really have to get this done, so it's going to live on my calendar, and I'm blocking out the next hour to work on it, and here's the context of what I'm doing. So
that is one of my favorite. That is one of my favorite things. No, yeah, obviously that's just one of my favorite things. That from a time management perspective, not only is it really easy to just make that, because so many times and this is bad email management, right? So you'll mark it as unread. Oh, well, I'll get to that later, as opposed to blocking off time in the future to make sure you're going to be able to get to an important message or an important event or important meeting or just a to-do. So I actually, and from a time management trick perspective, I was coached many years ago that let's be realistic about the things you have to do. So block off the time you think it's going to do it. So at a quick drag and drop, just like Kim said, it helps me from a time management perspective, and also helps me manage my email better because I'm actually blocking out the time to make sure I get my email done. So yep. Great little tip.
All right. So moving on to our next tool, Microsoft Teams. Microsoft does have a couple of different chat type applications, but today we'll be focusing on Teams specifically. Within Teams, you can do voice and video calls, as well as sharing your screen. You can do one-to-one chat or group chats. You can share and edit files, live edits to the files with multiple people editing at the same time if need be. We'll discuss the differences between channels and threads, and how to create a Teams meeting. So we'll go ahead and launch this. So I'm logged into Teams as Karen Berg. Couple of different things here. So let's say we wanted to have a video chat with Dan. You can launch video chat here. And let's see if Dan will answer. Hello. Exit that. Looks like Dan is not available to answer. So within this screen, actually, let me pull that back up just real quick. So within the screen, you can do the video chat. You can also do your screen share here. So if Dan were to pick up, let me see if I can call from his desk. It doesn't want to work. So what you would do is this call would connect, and you would launch this, and you would select the screen that you want to share. One of the things that's built into Teams is anytime you want to anytime you want to share a screen, you'll have to go back into your Teams chat and select a different screen if you're hopping between different applications or different documents. Part of that is due to security measures. We all have things up on our desktop that maybe we're not ready to share yet, or the person that you're talking to shouldn't be seeing. So it really makes it an intentional choice of what you're sharing with them rather than anything on your desktop goes, which is a difference from Skype. So really handy feature. You can also share and edit files. So from here, it looks like we've already shared the Contoso M33 PowerPoint. Just to give a demonstration of how you would do that, you can attach a file, and we'll go from our OneDrive, and here's that PowerPoint again. Go ahead and send. So I'm going to open it up within Teams, and I have another screen open with Dan logged in. So we'll show you what it looks like to have multiple people editing at the same time. For the edit features, you can have edit directly in Teams, or you can launch PowerPoint from a desktop version or the online version. For the purpose of today, we will go ahead and just do the Teams editing. So you can log in and say, just your dryer. Maybe it's not the smart way. we'll go ahead and edit, and then you'll see Dan hop in here. Oh.
And in the upper, you actually see it in the upper corner. You actually see Dan Jump is also editing, and you see the connection between those two.
Yep, and what he has selected, so Dan Jump is editing anything within this purple window. So let's get rid of that.
And as Kim is typing, one of the things that she mentioned that you can edit in Teams or PowerPoint online or PowerPoint full desktop version. And you will notice subtle differences between the feature sets will be not always exactly the same depending on whether you're in Teams or online or in the full version. That's going to evolve over time, but just be aware, like, and Kim and I don't have all those things memorized for every application like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and et cetera. But there are subtle differences. So be aware that you can do all of it you can do all of it, meaning from Teams, and it will all work and collaborate just like what Kim is showing. But sometimes you'll notice differences. So just be aware of that as you work with your team.
Good call out there. All right. So great thing if you need to edit, and the nice thing about this is because everything's synced back to OneDrive, all of those edits are already saved. So you don't have to worry about anything getting lost or having to recreate. So really awesome feature. The next thing we're going to cover in Teams is channels and conversation threads. So if you look at your Teams button, you'll have a couple of different what we call channels. So channels are any kind of subgroup within your organization, and it can be based on department, based on special project, based on whatever it is that you need. And you'll see different chats going on in both. So here's all of the members. And if we look at the M400 channel, so here's a whole bunch of different chats. And let's say Diane's message. Here's what we call a thread. Anytime somebody wants to respond back to a specific conversation, you'll go to the reply line within the actual message itself and go ahead and enter. What that'll do is capture the comments to go along with the rest of the conversation. And if you leave this page and come back, what you'll see is that conversation is now the most recent thing within that channel. So there's no more scrolling through messages, trying to connect who's talking about what, and seeing all of the different comments. They're already all stored all together. They come down to the bottom, so it could be something from June, and there's new information that somebody has to add. Well, that's now at the forefront of the conversation history, so that nobody's missing that and getting lost in, well, I didn't see that. That was from June. How can you expect me to be scrolling through my chats? So super handy. I love it. The other thing.
The only thing I'd say, Kim, on that is that it's interesting to, it's important to make your team aware of that, because now that's kind of instant message. There's some of the instant messaging, people are used to some of that, but just being aware that if you're replying to a previous conversation, instead of, some people will make a new message, and then that doesn't work, right? So it's a subtle training thing, but if you're using team channels, just train your team to reply like Kim said, and then you get all the benefits of what Kim just mentioned, as opposed to somebody creating a new message, which could create confusion.
Yep. All right, moving on. The last thing that we're going to cover in Teams is setting up meetings within Teams. So if you go to your meetings tab, what you'll see is a listing of your calendar. Here's a meeting that's scheduled for tomorrow. You can add a new meeting. So let's say we need to do a status meeting, let's say this afternoon, and we need to invite some people. So let's invite Dan and Julian and Greg. You can enter any of your details through the meeting here. You can see a scheduling assistant directly within Teams, so you can see who's available or not. You can go in and add a specific channel. So if you're just going to do it through a chat, you can select the channel to do it in. Once you have the meeting scheduled, we'll give it a minute. Anybody who's participating will have a join or chat option. Microsoft Teams will provide a dial-in number with a conference ID, so similar to something like GoToMeeting. And you can go ahead and join. It'll launch your video call. You can join with sound off. You can kind of manipulate who has talk capabilities and who has video capabilities. And then you can share a screen again from this window. So really handy, something that's kind of nice and built into Office 365. I know a lot of folks are using third-party softwares to do these kind of meetings, especially if you're collaborating across sites or maybe even countries. So this is something that's nice and built in and already within your Office 365 suite. All right, next thing, Microsoft Forms. So with forms, you can create a couple of different things. You can create a web form or a quiz. You can share internally or externally, and then you can collect and review responses and export them to Excel. So we go ahead and take a look at Office 365, and anything listed here in your apps is going to be the most recently used applications. So we haven't used Forms in a while, so we'll hop up into the waffle and we will scroll down to Forms and go ahead and open it. And Forms is really very intuitive. So you can go ahead and create a new form. Couple of different things that you can do. There's multiple different question types. So you can do multiple choice, choose option A, B, or C. You can do a free-form text question. You can do a rating. How many stars would you give this? You can also change this to a number system if you prefer. You can do dates. So earlier we were talking about we're scheduling a company picnic or a company event. What date works best for you? And then you can select options here. And then there's also a ranking where you can say pick the one that works best for you. Likert, which is kind of that matrix of satisfied, not so satisfied, completely dissatisfied. And then the final is a Net Promoter Score. So when it comes to sharing internally or externally, let's say you're working with some customers and you want them to rate how your business is doing for them. Net Promoter Score is perfect for that. So you can automatically create this form. You can create different themes and do custom pictures if you want so that it can be personalized to your company. You can also preview and see what it would look like on either a computer view or on a mobile view. So if you need to do some edits and kind of refine how things look because you know that you're working with salespeople that are out in the field, you can do that and you'll know what it looks like before you send it out. So that's really awesome. You can also share this information out. You have all kinds of options. You can send a link. You can send a QR code. Again, if you have folks that are maybe doing stuff on their phones all the time, you can go ahead and paste it into a page, maybe your SharePoint page, a Sway page, anything like that. And then you can, of course, email, which will send the link directly and collect all of those responses for you. We do have a couple of forms that were pre-built. So when you look at the responses received, you can see, you know, who requested what. There's graphs that can go along with this. There's the rating average, last date of response, and then kind of a bar graph. You can also open this in Excel. Another handy tool or way to use forms rather is internal quizzing. So if you're building out a training plan for your staff, you can build out a quiz to see what kind of information was retained and what information was missed. And then you can kind of target things that way. You can do it for compliance needs or did you read our handbook? Things like that. So all kinds of great applications here. And then of course you can export to Excel and see how things look and manipulate the data if you're a numbers person like me. So
the only other thing, Kim, that I wanted to note on the share tab, the share option, is that you can share internally or externally, right? So the option that you have there for this survey shows that anyone with the link, if you notice on the Excel spread, you probably didn't notice it, but it didn't capture, it showed that the person responding was anonymous. And that was because it put anyone with the link can respond. But if you actually say, I only want people internally to respond, it forces them to authenticate, and then you'll actually see in the results, you won't see it in this view, but when you open up the Excel spreadsheet, you'll actually see the name of the person and their email because it's actually tagging it to who they're logged into when they respond, who they're logged in as when they respond. So gives you some flexibility there for internal or external responses or anonymous responses versus named responses.
Yep, that's a good call out. Sometimes you want people to be anonymous, and then of course in the case of like a net promoter score, if somebody's dissatisfied, you'll probably want to know who it is so you can follow up with them. All right, our next tool is Microsoft Planner. A couple of different things you can do here. You can organize your work by different buckets. You can add people across your organization, whether they're collaborating on the project with you or you just need them to have visibility. You can create tasks, assign specific dates, and make checklists, and then you can sync those tasks with a calendar. So going back to Office 365 and opening up the waffle, planners down near the bottom, go ahead and get that launched. And there's a couple of recent plans that have been built out. So let's look at the Cleveland Store newsletter. So you'll see things that are past due will show up in red. You can create new tasks by saying review the template. And let's say Allie needs to do that task as well. So you can assign that to Allie and say the new due date for that is tomorrow. We'll add another task and say launch the newsletter. And that can be Karen Berg's responsibility, and she'll have to do that at the end of the month so it's ready to go for September. Couple of handy things within Planner. You can take a look at some different charts to just get a quick gauge from a dashboard point of view of where things are, what's behind, what's on task, and maybe who's kind of responsible for some of those things so you know who to follow up with. You can also take a look at a schedule view. So there's a handy calendar that's kind of built in with this. Here's all of the folks that are able to see this plan, whether they're collaborating or not, if they have tasks assigned, or maybe, they just need some visibility into how things are going. That is available here. And then if you want to add this plan to Outlook, so you get those handy meeting reminders, you'll get this pop-up iCalendar link and go ahead and add to Outlook. And when this launches, you'll have the Outlook calendar already added. You'll see, go away. Go ahead and hit save when it launches, and you'll see that it'll pop up with those people assigned. So you get those calendar reminders, you're staying on task, you're keeping things moving forward. Anything to add, Nate?
Yeah, if you go back to the planner view, yeah, the only thing that I would add, and you mentioned it real briefly, but I can't emphasize enough that there's two things. One is that you mentioned people that can have visibility to it. They might not be people that are ever assigned any of these tasks, but it's someone that you might work with. Like, for instance, in our organization, we have, I work with the marketing team, but the marketing team works with both branches, the Colorado and the Minnesota locations. And so both GMs of those locations want to have visibility to what's going on in marketing, but they don't necessarily ever, they're not ever assigned to it. But because they're members, they can actually choose to subscribe to it or get notified when things are updated or done or completed, and they can just check in on see how it's going. So it's actually a real nice way to give visibility to people that you're working with without necessarily even having to assign them. And the last thing that I always like to mention about Planner is that if you're used to using a more sophisticated project management tool, whether it be an on-premise version or a hosted version, Planner probably is not going to be enough for you. But for those that are just trying to do some basic collaboration and project management and Gantt charting and assigning of tasks and tracking of that, this is an excellent tool to be able to use. And you can also embed this into that Teams view. So that same Teams chat, the Teams view, the channels that Kim was showing earlier, you can actually embed Planner into it. So it's a single pane where everyone on that team can collaborate either on chat or messages or files and or a project management plan like this. So really powerful stuff with Planner, and I hope everyone finds a way to use it because it can work really well, and it's mobile friendly.
Yeah, almost all of the Office 365 applications are completely mobile friendly. There's a couple that have maybe a snag here or there, but I know that Microsoft's working on that. So soon, I believe everything will be fully integrated for a mobile experience. Okay, our next tool is Microsoft Flow. Flow gives you the ability to set triggers and actions. So if you're kind of a workflow type of person and you want things done automatically for you, there's a whole bunch of things that you can do. So we'll go into the waffle, and there's Flow. A couple of things. If you're super logical and you know exactly what you want to build out, you can build custom flows. If you maybe just want to poke around, Microsoft has a ton of templates out there. So you can go and take a look at what they have available. And let's say we want to set an approval. So start an approval when a new item is added to SharePoint. Let's say you're responsible for the marketing site. So the flow will connect to your Office 365 Outlook, your SharePoint, and then the approvals will be the action. You just hit continue. And the really nice thing about Office 365 is because everything's tied together, you'll be able to select things pretty quickly. SharePoint list name. Yep. So we'll just, well, it's loading. So let's say our sales operations, and we'll select a list. Maybe not. Well, boo.
Some of these
not pulling any
don't
of the
always
lists
have
over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the idea,
well,
though, is
okay.
that, yeah, I mean, is that it's sometimes you'll have to create the pieces. Like I know I've had to create, like, you've got to build the Excel template that you're going to use to dump things into, but then you can basically select those things as you go through it.
Yeah.
But it's powerful, just automation that can go in the background between different applications.
Yep. So this one here is actually already pre-set up. So it's asking for a login because I'm logged into the temporary tenant. So let's go in as Karen. Go ahead and accept. What this will do is connect Karen's Outlook and OneDrive as soon as it's done. We'll select this here as well.
And this is one of the things with the challenges of one of the things that Microsoft will do that's nice is that it will auto log you. So if you're logged into your computer as your corporate named user, it'll actually automatically work to log you into any of the web portals that are associated with Office 365. It does this kind of a single sign-on integration. Well, so the problem that Kim's experiencing right now is that Mytech, she's logged into her Mytech computer that is trying to also auto-authenticate her with her Mytech username and password. And so when she's trying to log in here, it's actually the computer's kind of confused. So most people shouldn't have to deal with this, and you wouldn't see this unless you're logging into multiple different accounts. But sometimes that happens though. Like for instance, I know that I help my wife, and she has an Office 365 account. So sometimes for my computer, I'm logging into her account. So I run into this on occasion every once in a while as well. If you're trying to switch between different accounts, you're fully capable of doing it, but you'll see some of the idiosyncrasies that Kim just experienced, and it's good to be aware of that.
So at any rate, when it's all set up, you'll be able to see a flow history. So let's say Dan Jump will send you an attachment today. That would automatically go here. And what it would do is automatically save the file to your OneDrive. So it would pop up here. There's no more searching, no more trying to remember to save things to the right folder. You can just set that all up automatically. So want that it didn't work today, but that's the gist of it, and usually it does work, and it's pretty awesome.
So there'll also be just the note on that as you just to follow up there. So there's some workflow built into to SharePoint, and actually our webinar next month is going into some workflow capabilities in SharePoint, and some of the differences between what you can do in SharePoint, and that'll be a recorded session as well for those of you listening. What you can do in SharePoint versus Flow. One of the things about Flow that is really nice, it's a good delineator, is that Flow can attach to external applications as well. Like I was talking to a marketing person yesterday, and that way, there's one of the things that they could do is they could take a Twitter feed. So let's say someone mentioned their company name in Twitter, and the marketing person wanted to make sure that they never missed something like that. Well, you could actually write a flow to monitor your Twitter feed and see if your company name was mentioned and send you a notification. So there's things like that you can do. I'm not saying that that's the way you should use Flow, but it's just an example where that's not an inherent functionality of SharePoint. You have to use Flow as a third part to be able to attach to the third-party application, as Kim's pulling up a lot of different applications that you can use. So that's actually some of the power of Flow, is being able to attach not just the stuff inside of SharePoint, but the external applications as well. So yeah, just kind of a trivia and side note relative to workflow that you might consider, like why would I use Flow versus workflow that's inside of SharePoint? That's why. That's one of the main reasons why.
Yep. And as you can see, there's a ton of integrations, and Microsoft is always adding more. So there's definitely something out there for everybody. All right, our final thing that we're going to look at today is Microsoft Power BI. Power BI can be used to create visual reports built from Excel spreadsheets. So we take a look, there's a couple of pre-populated items within Power BI, and we've accessed it recently, so here we go. You can look at a couple of different things. So if we look at remittance, for example, this is something that we created. You can get some handy different graphs. You can also look at different data sets. So you can launch here. So let's say you have an Excel spreadsheet with your smartphone pre-sales. You can select all of your options and fields over here on the right-hand side. So let's say we want to see by customer type and the promotion. Oops, getting click happy. And then when you do the filters over here, you can kind of drag and drop and select different fields. One of the examples that I would like to walk you through, so go back to, good Lord, getting so click happy and now I can't go back. I hate when that happens. Okay, so if we look at, for example, we want to build a report about remittances. You can create a new item. you can share, you can analyze in Excel, you can do quick insights. So let's hop into this remittance. This is pulling from Karen's OneDrive. So if we take a look here, there's that authentication issue again. So you'll see all kinds of things here, and we're pulling from the Contoso Bank remittance. So you'll see the Excel file with all of the transaction amounts and all of the data. So when you look at this is actually a breakdown of the remittance by region. If you wanted to edit the report, here's your region, your states, your remittance numbers. You can go over here to your filters. You can change your page size, background, and all of that to customize. And let's say we want to do the transaction amounts for advanced filtering. You can say less than, let's say less than 100 million, and apply the filter, and then it would alter your data. So if you're into numbers, if you're into graphing, into reporting, you can pull in all kinds of great things. Let's take a look at the data analysis for smartphones. So you can also do multi-layered charts. So if you're doing international work, if you're doing national work or cross-departmental work, you can identify that in multiple different ways so that it's easily accessible. When you update the Excel spreadsheet or your database, these reports automatically get updated. So if you were to share this out with your staff, for example, they'll always get the most recent information. So there's never that back and forth of, well, did that get updated? And who's on top of this? And, oh, no, I have to forward you the new report. There's never a lapse in data moving forward when you start using this. So it's awesome. You can use it for your staff capabilities. You can use it for performance reviews. You can use it for sales. You can use it for marketing. Pretty much anything that you can pop into a database.
Yeah, and this is actually, I mean, every business. No, I would say like you were just saying, and I think I can't emphasize this enough. It's a simple way to be able to take data that every business has, and we even showed in previous examples. Even though some of those survey responses, for instance, you can pop that out to Excel. You could write a flow to take your survey responses, dump it into Excel, which then you could have a Power BI dashboard just that automatically displays and is updated every time somebody enters in a new survey response. So there's so much you can do by just looking at the data and then sharing it with those who need to view it, whether it's creating a dashboard or just an email that's being scheduled or a link that's always shared so that they can always go and see the current information. So really powerful tools. There's way more complex stuff that you can do, but would just take a lot more time to build out that we don't have today. But anyway, great stuff. Wanted to share that. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course. And that takes us through our tips and tricks for today. Again, we have the Office 365 immersion experiences at both sites. Like Nate said, they're running about once a month between the two offices, so check out our website. And some additional upcoming events. Nate, do you want to speak to those?
Yeah, I'll hit on these really quick. I mean, the Mytech U, the one at the bottom of the page here, that's actually came out of a lot of the conversations we've had with these type of topics, because a lot of people are saying, okay, that's great. Now I see all the different things, at least the 25 that we showed you today. How do I take that and drive adoption with my team? So we've actually put a list of some panelists together to kind of walk through some tips and tricks and some best practices and 5 steps to drive adoption with your team by taking some of this content and how you can apply it into your world. And finally, in preparation for the Does Your Technology Know Your Business Plan, we're hoping to adjust. There's going to be a demonstration as well as a panel where we're going to be talking about how can we as technologists and business people do a better job of aligning those two things so that your technology can at least support or help or enable the business plans that you have going into next year. And so and how to leverage that. So those are our 2 events that we have coming up. We'd love to see you at those. And you can always check out mytech.com/events for any future events, webinars, whether it's in person, Colorado or Minnesota. We always have some stuff coming up into the future that we'd love to see you. And that's basically it. So thank you, Kim, so much for walking us through and doing switching back and forth between demonstrating and the authentication issues that happen when you're trying to highlight information and logging in as different people. But I hope everyone enjoyed this, and you can reference this in the future. But the Microsoft 25 Microsoft Office 365 tips and tricks will be available online shortly. And make it a great day.
Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, Kim.